Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Author Castle. I am your host, Angela Loria, and I am joined today for our best-selling author interview by Majeed Magaraban, author of Fearless Leadership. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. We are going to have an intimate fireside chat today about what it takes to get a book that makes a difference, written, published, and out in the world making a difference. And I know you have a pretty amazing story of what's happened for you in the time since you came up with the idea to write this book, how your business and your life and your family has transformed. And I'm really excited to share that with people because I know that a lot of people wonder, like, is a book project going to be worth it? It's a lot of time, it's a lot of money, it's a big investment. So take us back to where you were when you started thinking about writing a book. And for you, this, I know, wasn't your first book.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about where you were before you decided to commit to writing your book. What were you thinking about? What were you worried about? And what were you hoping for?
So, right. So this is my second book with you. First book, my first book was self-published. It was called Winning at Life. And even at that time, I knew I wanted some help with writing a book. And so what I did was I looked for a co-author. And so I wanted to be a motivational speaker. I wanted to be a professional speaker. And I thought, you got to have a book to be a speaker, right? And my thinking was, if I have a book, the speaking gigs would just come flying at me, like I would just have so many speaking gigs. You know that didn't happen.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So I go to this, I asked around, who's the most successful motivational speaker around me in Ottawa, Canada? And there's a guy named Bob Urachuk, very successful, and he has a book. And so I met with him and I said, look, what if I repurposed your book for the youth market? Because he's a sales professional, okay? So he's working with salespeople. And so he said, sure, let's co-author. And so I put in some of my stories, I used his structure and his process, and we had co-authored Winning at Life. Now the problem was his process wasn't exactly what my process would be, and the structure was not exactly speaking to me, so I never really felt fully aligned with it, first of all. Secondly, my business model was get speaking gigs and sell books to kids. And
big readers?
Well, yeah. And so I remember one time I had this room full of 100 students. And so guess how many books I brought to that event?
100
100 books.
Yeah, because they're
to
all
sell,
going to
right?
want one.
So I'm thinking, what's the most I could sell a book for? Because I got to make some money, right? So $20.
$20,
yeah.
All right.
So $20. And so after my speech, I'm like, I'll be at the back of the room signing books. They're only $20. And I put my table right where all the kids have to walk by. And they all walked by except for one. And I'm like, I've decided I'm already defeated. Okay, so the one is flipping through.
Not winning at life.
No, not winning at selling books right now. And so and I stop her and I say, what are you thinking right now? Like, are you thinking, is it worth buying or something? She's just like, I just have so much homework. It feels like more work. And so I sold 0 copies and I carried 100 books back to the car. And this is sort of the story of Winning at Life, is lots of books in my shed, not sold, not making a difference.
Not making a difference,
Not
yes.
making a difference. The book's not getting purchased, the book's not getting read. So that's where I started with my self-published book.
So I'm sure you're really excited about writing book number 2.
Well,
knowing that joy.
I decided I'm not a writer, I'm not an author, books are a terrible thing. And, I made lots of decisions until I met you, until I saw you speak at an event. And you said something quite brilliant, which is you have to choose one reader. And I remember having this triangle diagram of my readers. There's the student reader, there's the parents, there's the teachers, and so like I have to write a book that all of these, and it's such a simple concept, but just choose one person who's the reader and write them a love letter, was your language that I remember. And I'm like, that's what I got to do. So I wasn't sure who the reader was going to be, and as I started to follow you more and I read your book, you gave me a copy of your book, The Difference, I realized, for me to make the biggest difference, it's got to be the person who's going to be resonating most with my message, the person who can afford to hire me so that I can really serve them on a much deeper level and not just give them the 2-hour book experience, but really give them maybe even the year-long service delivery experience, which is what led me to small business owners who run service companies who want to upgrade the culture of their company to a level of excellence and higher levels of customer service. Those are the people I can really support. So
now, at this point, as you're trying to figure out who your ideal reader is, who you're going to write this book for, what's going on in your life and your business? Were you an entrepreneur at this point? Did you have a full-time job? Where were you?
Okay, so I was slowly...
We know the book selling was not paying the bills.
Right, right. In fact, the first book is a net loss. Just in my cost of printing alone is a net loss, okay? So at the time when I decided I'm going to write a book with you, I had become a successful trainer, corporate trainer in the leadership world, big companies. There's a training company that I worked with called Learning Tree International, all around the world.
Happened to be based up the road.
Happened to be based here in DC, that's right. And I had become their #1 trainer in the world, highest rated out of 721, due to the work that I was doing as a trainer. And I was training leadership and public speaking for sort of middle management people. So I knew I had that training gift, and I was getting booked quite a bit, but there's sort of an upper limit of what you can do when you're subcontracting with another company. And so I was transitioning into doing that training myself. And I had booked a couple of gigs of going direct to client with training. And I knew that I needed to get my methodology down. I needed to get my positioning down, and I didn't have that. I'm just kind of like, I'm a trainer. Let me just train your people something.
So as you're thinking about a book, the first time you thought about a book, and I think a lot of people watching this will be in the same position, they're like, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to make lots of money from book sales. I'm going to go and speak to 100 people and I'm going to sell 100 books at $20 each, $20 times 100 people. It's like $2,000. I can speak like 10 times a month. I'm going to be making $20,000 a month speaking and selling books from the back of the room, which is like a no. That's not going to work.
That's exactly what I thought.
You learned that the hard way.
Exactly.
And then you thought, all right, I still want to do a book. Maybe I'm not a writer, but maybe I can use a book to get training gigs privately instead of getting training gigs with this company. I get paid for the training gigs. So I use the book, not worried as much about book sales, use the book to get training gigs. Is that kind of what you're thinking, or?
Yeah. I mean, the book tells the story, it establishes the credibility, it gives the methodology, and so the process is, I want my ideal reader to pick up my book, read it, and go, this is so good, we got to hire the guy.
Love it.
Or
totally different than this is so good, I got to buy the book.
Right. There was no upsell in the book. There was no service delivery in the book. The book was the whole business model. It was like $20 is the revenue. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you kind of figured out a big piece of the making a difference with a book model is having a book that's generating either speaking, coaching, consulting, something on the back end instead of the book being the end. I shared it in that speech that you heard me make. I shared it in my book that you read.
Yes.
Why not just go do that on your own? You'd now figured out what you did wrong with the first book.
Right.
You'd already written a book. You obviously knew how to do that. You knew how to self-publish and buy books.
Why don't I just do it on my own? That's a good question. Well, one thing, one of the reasons why I worked with your publishing team is I knew I would get a bestseller. And I was a bit naive at the beginning of the process because, again, I thought, if I'm a bestseller, what's going to happen? Those speaking gigs are just going to start flooding at me. People are going to find me around the world. I heard you were a bestseller. We want you to fly out to our conference and speak to our people. So I thought, guaranteed bestseller, that's a good deal.
Like that?
Right,
okay.
That's a good deal. I also like that you were going to give deadlines, because I'm a last minute guy, and if there's no deadline, last minute is never done, right? And so your program at the time was called 3 Days to Done. And I'm like, that's exactly what I need. I could take 3 days and I want done. Done is exactly what I want.
Done is what I want.
So, because guess what? The first book was 2 years to done.
Ooh.
2 years to done. And it was like every day I was like, should write my book. And as you can imagine, 2 years is not 2 years of actual work.
Right.
It's 2 years of worrying about writing.
2 years of carrying like a backpack full of bricks because you're always like, I am not writing, I'm not writing enough, it's not good enough, like let's just get that over with.
Yeah. So there was that, there was the deadlines, there was the bestseller status, and then I knew that you knew how to write a particular kind of book that gets people to flip through the pages and say, we got to hire this guy. Because I read your book, and I'm like, I got to hire this lady, right? And I'm dissecting your book, and I'm going, so, and by the way, you kind of give away all the secrets in the book.
Give away all the secrets in the book. That's why I was like, just go do it.
Which is such a great philosophy, and that's what I do in my book. I'm like, here's exactly what I would do if I would work with you, and you can do it yourself, and most of you will try, but some of you will hire me to do it for you, which was my experience. So I saw myself going through this very same process, and I'm just like, I need one of these for me. This would be such an asset for my business to be able to go, here you go. And you gave me your numbers at one point. It's like, if I put something like 200 books in a bunch of people's hands, we know we're going to get a customer. So I go, I want to know my numbers, whether it's 100 books or 1,000 books. I want to know that number to get that predictable business. Instead of just going feast to famine, gig to gig, it's like, give away X many books, or put
200 books would be for us 14 applications and probably 3 clients. So I know that if I can give 200 books away and I can afford to spend $20, $30, even $100 to give a book away, because I know exactly how much we'll make.
Yeah.
So it makes it totally different. Instead of thinking, oh, I hope I make $20, now I'm like, I hope I can spend $20 to give my book to somebody.
Yes. That whole concept, spend money to give a book to someone, is like, hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Super fun. Okay, so as you know, writing a book is hard, tortured work and takes a very long time. So tell me about the hard, tortured work. You came to a castle, and then what happened?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the process of getting your book written.
So, I decided I wasn't going to think about it at all until I got to the castle, which was probably good because
it was good. So a lot of people, when they're thinking about writing their book, they're like, I got to go interview 100 people. Did you have that terrible thought? It's one of the most common, pervasive thoughts. I'm going to interview people to find out. No, stop that nonsense.
Yeah, no, I just assumed you were going to like wave your magic wand and like pull a book right out of my brain and then it would be done.
Yeah.
That's what I imagined was going to happen. And it was pretty close to that. I will say. I mean, we had fun for 3 days and it was not. Of course, I'll tell you some of the struggle. So there's imposter syndrome. Who am I to write this book?
Did that happen when you showed up to start writing your book, you paid the money, you showed up, and then you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be here?
You know, actually, a lot of that happened between being done with the writing and the publishing date.
Yeah, the writing's I won't say it's the easy part, but...
It was for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, writing was so much easier than editing. It was still so much easier than my very first book. So much easier. Because I just had no guidance, didn't know what I was doing with the first book. So here's how it went in 3 days. So the first day, you kind of taught us marketing. There was a little group, there's 3 of us. And you taught us like how to write the love letter for the ideal reader. You taught us how to get into the mind of the ideal reader. You taught us how to get through writer's block with your activity called the Creativity Temple, which was very useful. And then we built the inline, which is like the skeleton of the book. And once I had the skeleton of the book, I can just see it. You can see it at that point.
Done. Yeah.
It's a very simple process. It's like, into the mind and the heart of the ideal reader. What's the process you're going to take them through? And I wrote the process book, like this is my methodology book. And then what should you do moving forward, next steps, next actions. So very clear, very functional structure. And then I actually spoke the whole book.
I love this.
So my business is like, I do coaching calls, I do training. My business, I'm speaking all day long. And I can formulate thoughts through words. But if I sit down and look at a screen, words don't come out of my fingers. It starts to hurt. I start to edit before I'm writing. So this is what I did. I took my cell phone and I went for a walk for like 2 hours, right down by the Potomac River on the little trail down there.
We happen to live on a river, so you get to get a little nature in.
It was beautiful because when I'm on the phone, I'm pacing. When I'm talking, I'm usually pacing. So it was perfect. So I'm walking. I don't know. There's something to do with synchronicity in the brain and everything.
I think there actually is some science behind that. Yeah.
So, and I'm just using the little notes app on my iPhone and just clicking the little microphone button and just talking. And I look at it and there's a bunch of typos, but that's fine. At least I can fix the typos. So, and I just did that. Each one of our chapters, we had like questions, so like sub bullet points of each section. So it's like I was asking myself the question and answering it.
Yep.
And then I had...
Which is, by the way, so I was a ghostwriter for 17 years, and this is what ghostwriters do. They take each chapter, they turn it into like an FAQ for the, because when you're ghostwriting, you have to interview the author, so it sounds like it's their words.
Yeah.
So you take the chapter and you turn it into like 10 questions, and then you get an hour with the author, because usually I was doing ghostwriting for like celebrities and politicians. So I get like an hour per chapter with them, and I just like bang out 10 questions, have them answer it, record it. And you could do that with yourself. Ask yourself 10 questions, and you definitely have a chapter. And you just speak it out loud.
Yeah. Yeah, and in the paragraphs, I had little things like, no, go back, like just in the words, right? And on the 3 Days to Done program, every 2 hours we had a chapter done, and the rule was you cannot go back to the last chapter. So by the end of the 3 days, I was certain that everything I wrote was complete garbage.
Yeah.
I was like, this is going to be terrible. And so when I sent it off to the editor, it started with an apology. I'm so sorry. This is such garbage. I really hope you can figure out what I'm trying to say here. Please make it sound like I know what I'm talking about. Or just make it sound like...
At least don't embarrass me.
Yeah. So she was very caring, very supportive, and I think I've only worked with your one editor, Cynthia. She was so supportive, because she must understand it's such an emotional process to, like, you know.
And she's an author too. All of our editors are authors.
So that really helped. And then so she did an edit, and I sort of approved her edits one by one. And we had like some flow issues, like this section should go to this part of the book, so we moved it around. That part was harder for me, because that's all left brain organizational stuff. It's not like just let it flow. It's like make it make sense kind of work. But she got it.
That's why we need a line editor sometimes. Put everything in line.
And
but it's amazing how much, like if you look at the amount that you wrote in those 3 days of like when you dictated your book and got that first draft done, I bet, but you tell me, that you probably used a lot of it. Like probably 80% of that made it into the book, and it wasn't nearly as terrible as you thought it was.
Yeah, I think of it like raw materials. Like I had produced a bunch of raw materials, and then I organized into the ideal structure.
So how long from the moment you decided that you were going to write the book until your book was published? Do you know what that timeline was?
We
2
finished
years?
in the first one.
No, the second one.
Oh, the second one, yeah. So we finished in November, mid-November, and it was a bestseller on January 19th.
So 2 months, little different than 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you have a guess at how much time that you spent in those 2 months on it? Was it your full time doing nothing else?
Absolutely not. 10 hours.
Really?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the launch. So I kind of put together a launch team and organized the launch thing. But the editing part, maybe that was 20 hours.
Okay. Yeah. So this is what I say. I say that it's 100 hours. Now I'm going to tell you how I get there, and tell me if you think I'm in the ballpark. So 3 days to done, that was, let's just say 3 10-hour days.
Yeah.
Right? And you could have spread those out over 10 weeks if you wanted, but let's say 30 hours in the 3 days to done. And then over the next 4 weeks of editing, I think you take about another 30 hours to do the editing. So I just kind of double that. That's 60. And then usually when we do our launches, we have people here for a couple days. So that's like another 20 hours. And then I give you another 20 hours for all the marketing steps. So I say, following our process, a reasonable human, like I'm not making this up, like a reasonable human could do our process in 100 hours of work.
Yeah, and that's generous. And I think you could spend twice as much time, but it will not be twice as good.
It will not be twice as good if you spend twice as much time.
No, and you've kind of shared with me that like that's almost a selfish act to like try to avoid some imperfections when you could just be serving your clients with that same time. So that was helpful for me to just move forward.
Would you rather spend another 100 hours, so you spend 200 hours on your book, or would you rather spend 100 hours on your book and then 100 hours helping another human solve a problem?
Yeah.
I would take solve the problem anytime.
Yeah.
So you're thinking you were in the, maybe even 50-hour range to get it written, get it out in the world. It's obviously still a significant investment maybe a little less time than on your first book, but I'm going to guess maybe a little more money. Right? So it's still a significant investment. So now I have to ask you the money question, which is, was it worth it? Did you get a return on your investment? Did you get a return on your time?
Yeah.
Was this a good choice for you?
Yeah. So I made a lot of money. I made more money from the moment I decided to work with you until it was bestseller. I made more money in that period of time than I had in my entire career prior. So first of all, writing the book had several additional benefits other than having a book done. One was it allowed me to finally sit down and clarify my own methodology. So now I can explain to you my methodology in 30 seconds, whereas before it was just like, I'm a really good trainer and you should just hire me and like pay me like $1,000 a day and then I'll do training, because that's what I do, is I do training, right, or coaching. But I never really knew like what the result was and what the real problem was. So the process of writing the book allowed me to go really deep on one specific client, really understand their biggest challenges, really understand my own methodology and the value of that solution, and seeing how you sell and learning your sales methodology through your online trainings that you teach us how to sell. I was able to sell better than ever before.
Nice.
So.
Because you can't make a difference without selling. I don't know a way to do it.
Sales
I do
is
not
service.
believe it's possible.
It allows them to make the decision to solve the problem now. It allows them to move forward. If you can't close them, they can't make the decision and they can't move forward. So, and even if the close is they decide definitely not hiring someone and they're going to go do this by themselves, it at least serves them to help them move forward. So we got on a call to see if it was a fit. I said yes, but I don't have the money. And I had to move some money around, which really meant like, I don't know, should I open up another credit card or like move some money around? So I had like this like conversation with my wife and I said, I really think I should do this. And she was like, I don't know, we actually really don't have the money, Majeed. And so I put it on like the last inch of the credit card, right? And I was expecting some money to come in through invoicing, but it was taking some time. And I was at an event in September when I got a phone call. I was at the Archangel Summit in Toronto, having a great time. Got a phone call from my wife, panicked. She's like, Majeed, we have no money. The line of credit is maxed. The credit card is maxed. The other credit card is maxed. And the backup credit card is maxed. And she told me there's a pile of mulch on the driveway. We're doing our gardening in September. And the gardener was on his way to spread out the mulch, but I called him as he was driving to our house, told him to turn around and go back because we have no money. And by the way, if you go out to dinner tonight, your credit card might get declined. And when you get home, you're spreading out the mulch, she told me. So I was back against the wall.
You will shovel mulch.
She's being practical. So I had, that was the wake-up call I needed, is like, I just need to get on the phone and start making big offers and start selling. And so I had in mind, who's my ideal reader, what's my methodology, what's their biggest pain. So I had done that, thinking about all that. And that made the sales process a lot easier. And I started making upper 5-figure offers. Then I made 6-figure offers. And I ended up getting $500,000 in business in like a span of like 6 weeks. And I'm still delivering on those services, but those are like year-long contracts, and they're all this exact methodology and this exact ideal reader.
It's fantastic. So, did you still have to shovel the mulch?
I did.
Okay.
We made it fun. We put on gloves. We had fun with it.
I love it. That's awesome. So, what do you think in terms of, you've done a book, I'll say, that didn't make a difference, and then now you've done a book that generated $500,000 before it was even written.
Yeah.
What do you think that difference was for you? I call my book The Difference. I talk about the difference process. How would you characterize the difference?
Well, I think the difference starts with the customer making a profound investment. And you shared with me something about pricing. Is, we say, how should we price our services? And you say, price it at a point where the customer, when they say yes, it's going to demand a transformation. That's the price point. Because if I said, hire me for $1,000 a day or for $500, they would go, yeah, we got this trainer coming and, everybody stop what you're doing and we'll listen to them. But if we say we're making a huge investment, this is a major priority, then it makes a bigger difference just in that sense. So the higher you price, the bigger difference it is for the client, the more I can deliver my next level service. And by the way, I had never sold anything near that level. So it demanded me to raise my game, which is a great growth strategy.
I love
Raise
that,
your prices,
yeah.
and you go, holy crap, I got to really...
I better give them a $25,000 service
Yeah.
if I'm going to charge them that.
Yeah. So making a difference, it's just so much deeper than finishing the book. I mean, my first book was, shall I say, unfinishable. It was really hard to slog through a lot of exercises. It was like a workbook, So my book with you, Fearless Leadership, it's like you can get through it really simple, short paragraphs and really readable, but also it demands they ask themselves the question is, do I really want this transformation that I'm getting in this book? And do I want the simplest solution, which is to hire the expert to come in and do it for me?
Right. Totally. We have worked together now less than a year.
Yeah.
From our, from before writing the book to launching the book, getting the book written, launching the book to now. What's your favorite thing that's come out of the process for you and for your business? What do you think is the best thing you've gotten?
You taught me this term called holding space. And it's an interesting thing. It's like the way you described it, don't give the client what they're asking for, what they think they want, because you're the expert. Hold the space for giving them what they really need and believing in their transformation and accelerating their transformation. So when clients come to me, they're usually hiring me for a number of different reasons that's not the real problem. Like I want help with sales, or I need to grow my business, or I need to find the right people. And all of those same issues are rooted in fear and leadership and a lack of courage and a lack of clarity, which is exactly what my process helps them through. So holding the space for them and kind of creating helping them create the vision for their next level self and bringing them through that process in a way that's faster and less painful than they would be doing it themselves. That whole concept was really important to me, and it's definitely influenced how I deliver my services.
Is there a particular client you could think of that because of this book and this process and the decisions you've made in the last year or less? Is there somebody that you can think of that you've changed their life or their business?
Yeah, this is really cool. So my ideal reader is Kathy. And the reason Kathy's my ideal reader is she was the first person to say yes to a 6-figure offer. And so I said, wow, I want to do more.
I remember when she signed up too, and you called me, you're like, somebody just paid me $10,000.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I told you that would work.
Yeah. So she did this $10,000 coaching program with me, and then at the end of that I said, would you like to do a $100,000 year-long program where I work with your staff? And she said, yes, let's do it. So that worked really well. And she came to me for sales coaching. And what we found was that there was a culture of fear and indecision in the office. Great people, super smart, but they felt like they couldn't make the right decisions, and they had some unhealthy habits, working really hard, never taking breaks. And so the work that we did not only helped people make faster and more creative decisions, but everybody became more healthy. People started losing weight. They started going on walks for breaks and all this stuff. So this whole cultural transformation, people are now, it really elevated their work from just a job to a calling and an art form. And of course their sales went up. She did a $1 million deal within 2 weeks of our coaching, which is just basically
some nice ROI. I
Yeah.
like a 10x return.
Yeah, and she was doing something around 2 or 3 million annually and she wanted to double that. So we said, okay, let's focus on the biggest possible deal you can do. Let's put some offers out there right away. And she closed a $950,000 deal 2 weeks later.
She couldn't just get the extra 50,000.
I know,
Right?
I know.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That has to feel really good. So what I think is interesting about that story is how what she thought the problem was actually different than what you knew the problem was, but
Yeah.
you didn't force that on the front end. So one of the things I think is key to the difference process is what I call the join up, meeting the client where they are, meeting the
Yes.
prospect where they are,
Yeah.
and then being able to wade into the deep end of the
Yeah.
pool and do that work. And it can happen really fast, but if you throw someone to the deep end, they're just mad at you and they just get out of the pool. But
Yes.
you can actually get from the shallow end to the deep end, very quickly. That was
Yes.
a matter of, weeks in your
That's right.
engagement.
That's right. And I was modeling your approach to the 3 days to done is like, intensive immersion. And I think at the beginning of 3 days to done, I had this idea that there was going to be some magical wand that you were just going to like make a book happen or something. And then, you brought us through the whole process very quickly, and we had mindset shifts just like one after another. So that intensive immersive model works really well for me. That's what we did with Kathy. She came in thinking I need sales training, and then we really broke it down to what the real issues were. And then she had a roadmap, and she hired me to help her execute that roadmap. It's perfect.
Love it.
Yeah.
So good. So Majeed Magaraban is the author of Fearless Leadership. If people want to find you, Majeed, how do they do that? Because obviously we'll put that up on the screen, but Majeed Magaraban is not the easiest to Google. So tell me.
But you can do Majeed M. I've shortened the Magaraban down to M.
Perfect.
So it's MAJEEDM.com.
Awesome. So we will get that up on the screen so you guys can check out Majeed's website, find out more if it makes sense for him to train you and your company. And I just want to thank you for sharing that story with us and really how a book that makes a difference goes from an idea to a reality in just a matter of months. So
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
It's a great example of how we're changing the world, one book at a time.